Kimberly Halkett joins us live now from St. Louis, where the debate has just taken place. Kimberly, stakes were really high for both candidates, and it didn't take long for an explosive personal attack from both sides. How do you think they did?
Well, indeed, it won't matter really how I personally think. It's how the voters are receiving it. And certainly they're going to have the opportunity to digest it. But I think the takeaway, as we've been talking, reporters and pundits who have been watching and analyzing all of this, I think most people feel that pretty confident that Donald Trump at least met the expectations on the debate stage, but he certainly didn't pick up any new support. And that is what he would need to do to try and win the U.S. election. So he still has a challenge on his hands. He went into this behind Hillary Clinton in the polls, and of course reeling from the scandal of the last 48 hours and the 2005 tapes. And so certainly it was very uncomfortable for him, as he had to address that issue head on at the beginning, where, as you pointed out, he said this is locker room talk and he is not proud of it. But Hillary Clinton, she responded saying that this is exactly who Donald Trump is. It's representative of who he is, and certainly pointed it squarely on Donald Trump that he has not taken full responsibility for those statements.
You describe kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You brag that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk. And yes, I'm very embarrassed by it. I hate it, but it's locker room talk.
If this were just about one video, maybe what he's saying tonight would be understandable. But everyone can draw their own conclusions at this point about whether or not the man in the video or the man on the stage respects women. But he never apologizes for anything to anyone.
I want to talk a little bit more about the start of this debate and how it began highly charged. I want to bring in our political expert, Jason Johnson, who is a friend of Al Jazeera, who speaks on these issues extensively, also a professor of politics and wears many hats. Talk to me a little bit about how this started. I mean, even before the debate began, it had a bizarre beginning with Donald Trump in a press conference, and it really seemed to set the start of the tone of the debate.
Yeah. So Donald Trump brought out a slew of women who, in the past, have accused Bill Clinton of sexual harassment. One woman had actually accused Bill Clinton of rape. And he sort of had a press conference with these women, I guess. It wasn't clear they were endorsing him. They were sort of talking about things they thought Bill Clinton had done. I guess it was his attempt to blunt or distract from the tape that was released about him by Friday. I don't know if it had that much of effect because it wasn't really carried on television. So it set the tone. And when the two candidates came out at the beginning and chose not to shake hands, there was an audible gasp. Everybody knew that this was on, that this was going to be a serious conflict, and they couldn't even shake hands.
It was certainly uncomfortable for Hillary Clinton, I can only imagine, as a woman who has had to stand by her husband and some of these accusations and allegations that she has been an enabler in many ways, and then to have those women sitting there in the audience. How do you think Hillary Clinton handled this? Is there something more she should have done? How is she going to be judged in terms of that aspect of the performance?
I don't think she's going to be judged on it much at all, to be perfectly honest. One thing about this is that Hillary Clinton has been answering questions about her husband's behavior for 25 years. This is not new. She has met these women. She has spoken to them. And I think what's important to remember is, one, Bill Clinton isn't on the ballot, and two, every single one of these women have had their day in court against him. They've been able to sue him. They brought him up on charges. He's been impeached. He has answered for his behavior. Donald Trump has not. And so it's still a huge contrast in sort of presenting this. I think Clinton handled it fine. I think the question only lasted the first 10, 12 minutes of the debate. Then they moved on to policy.
Let's talk a little bit about the WikiLeaks revelation. Hillary Clinton, we probably would be talking more about that were it not for the salacious nature of these tapes. But how do you think she handled that answer? I mean, she certainly knew it was coming.
Right.
Some people think that perhaps she could have been better prepared in terms of the question of whether or not she is speaking out of both sides of her mouth, if you will, in the issue of reining in Wall Street.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting question because there's a clear example of it, right? There are many politicians who may be personally against abortion, but they are publicly in favor of abortion rights. So I thought there was an easier answer than what she gave. But what's interesting is this. Fact checkers online have shown she was actually talking about the movie Lincoln. There is a whole section in the movie Lincoln where they're talking about this. So while it sounded awkward to the ear at first, it was true. I think she answered it effectively, maybe not stylistically, but honestly and effectively.
What about the issue where Donald Trump was pressed on his position of his ban on Muslims, which he now says is actually just a form of extreme vetting?
Right.
He was pressed on that multiple times, saying that he hadn't changed the position. What is your take on his response?
Yeah, so he was asked, are you going to continue with the Muslim ban? And he said, we're going to call that extreme vetting. And that's akin to saying, well, you know, slavery is just long-term indentured servitude with chains, right? Look, he still wants to ban Muslims. He didn't have an answer. He didn't answer the woman's question. And I think Hillary Clinton answered the question much better. This is what's key about this debate. Donald Trump gave plenty of opportunities for the people who support him to be happy because he stood by his ground. He didn't completely go off the rails the way he did in the first debate, but he didn't win anybody over. And I don't think that it makes much sense to sort of view this debate in terms of wins and losses. It's really, I think both candidates did a good job of serving their constituencies, and I doubt the polls are going to change that much by Tuesday.
And he certainly probably didn't win any points with his running mate, Mike Pence, the governor of Indiana. That response that he gave with regard to the fact that he has a different position on Russia than his running mate, talk to us about your take on how he says the two haven't even spoken.
It was horrible. It was dismissive. He basically said, I don't even know this guy. I don't know him. He just denied his existence 3 or 4 times. What's also interesting is throughout this week, after the vice presidential debate, the Trump campaign showed pictures of Trump and Mike Pence talking on the phone together. So when he says that they didn't talk, either he was lying or those were fake pictures. But I think what it speaks to is this. Increasingly, this is a campaign about Donald Trump. It's not about the Republican Party. It's not about his running mate. It's not about the party as a whole. It's not about Congress. It's about whether or not he, through sheer force of will, can get himself into the White House because he has alienated everyone, except for his constituency of supporters.
So give us your thoughts. Can he get himself into the White House at this point, based on what we've seen just in the last 3 days?
Well, you know, if he can, if the Russians hack the way he seems to be suggesting. But let's be honest, I don't think so. I don't think the numbers are in his favor. And here's a really important thing, Kimberly, to bear in mind. Heading into Friday, when the tapes were released, Hillary Clinton was already pulling ahead by 10 in Pennsylvania and had pulled ahead by 3 in Florida. So even if Donald Trump did really well in this debate, it may only blunt what happened when the tapes were released, and that is not enough to reverse a trend that seemed to be moving in Hillary Clinton's favor. So I wouldn't say this race is over, but I would say that he still has a very steep hill to climb, and I don't know that this debate changed anyone's mind.
I think that many people thought this was over before this debate, though. There was even talk, I don't think there's going to be a third debate. It's not going to Las Vegas. What do you think turned it around?
I don't think anything turned it around. I think it was a bunch of hyperbole, right? I mean, look, Donald Trump was never going to leave the ballot. He's not going to quit, and you can't take him off the ballot. There's not enough time. The people who were abandoning him were people who were concerned about abandoning him anyway. So I don't really think that this race was ever over. There are 30 days left, and let's bear in mind, you've already had several people from different TV shows say, oh, you think those tapes were bad? There are more. There are supposedly tapes of Trump saying even more vulgar things, him using racial slurs one way or another. We know those are going to come out at some point, so this race is not over by any stretch of the imagination.
So are you suggesting, given the fact that Donald Trump is a reality TV star and had been on American airwaves for a long time, that perhaps, I mean, we've got a month left in this campaign. What do you expect we're going to see in terms of the tone of this campaign? Because many feel it really can't get any deeper in the gutter than it is already.
Well, yeah, what we saw today was disgusting. And I think it's important to put the blame on who the blame should be placed on. It's really Donald Trump. He had an opportunity to explain his own behavior on that tape and leave it at that. But instead, he decided to bring out a large number of women who have accused Bill Clinton, who's not even on the ballot. His own language, his own rhetoric, I think it has debased the process. There are plenty of ways that you can criticize Hillary Clinton about her honesty, about her ethics, about her consistency, even about her effectiveness. But you cannot say that she has lowered the quality of discussion and debate in the presidential campaign. You cannot say that she is not qualified. And those are things that I think have really come into question with some of Donald Trump's behavior, certainly over the last 2 weeks.
Let's talk a little bit about the moderators, because in the vice presidential debate, certainly the moderator was heavily criticized for not containing some of the arguments that were going on between the candidates. But these moderators tended to almost come in prepared that they were not going to put up with any of the back and forth, yet we still saw some of it. Give me your thoughts on sort of the tone and the tenor of this debate.
Well, on a technical level, Kimberly, the moderators did exactly their job. There was actually only a 33-second differential between how much time Donald Trump spoke and how much time Hillary Clinton spoke. So if the moderator's job is to make sure there's equal time, they did a very good job of it. I will say this. They managed to keep a reasonable tone between the candidates, but what they failed to do, in my view, is make it a town hall debate. We heard a lot more of the moderators than we heard of the regular people. There were plenty of questions that weren't asked. And I'll say this, I was here 2 years ago for Ferguson. This debate is taking place less than a 10-minute drive from Ferguson, where there were riots and where our entire national discussion on criminal justice came into the mainstream, and we didn't get one question on that. And I think that's because more time was spent with the moderators than regular people.
I think that that's certainly going to be something that's going to be talked about in the days to come. That is certainly a significant point. And the fact that this is such a racially divided country right now, and the fact that we are really right at the site of something that was put the Ferguson, Missouri in the international spotlight, to find that that has not been touched on in this debate to a large degree is certainly going to be disappointing to many, especially here locally. But for now, we'll continue to parse this and look at this debate. But for now, I want to hand it back to you in Doha.